Hey there, MPCs. Welcome to Rules of Cool, where we interview very special guests, creators, gamers, designers, and world builders. I'm your host, Rem, and today we're going to talk about all things Shadowrun Missions with Missions developer Aaron Dykstra. And then stay tuned because up next at 5 p.m. is the series premiere of our actual play of Shadowrun 6th World Emerald Glitch. But first, don't forget that you can support our wonderful partners at Fragging Unicorn Games by going to their Kickstarter and backing Misspent Youth Issue 3, Fall in Love, Not in Line. In fact, in 2 weeks, we'll be right here with the creator of Misspent Youth, Robert Bull, and the owner of Fragging Unicorn Games, OC Opti Presley, and lead developer of Issue 3, Clifton Lambert, for a very special interview. And after the episode of Rules of Cool, we'll be playing Misspent Youth on our monthly one-shot show, allowing our Shadowrunners to take a well-earned break. Now, time to get right into our conversation this week. So stay tuned, RemPCs. Welcome back. We are here with my friend Aaron to talk about Shadowrun Missions. So just to kick off, what are Shadowrun Missions?
So Shadowrun Missions are the living campaign of Shadowrun. It's something that's written by usually our demo agents and some other writers that we pull from the community. And really it's about standardizing the set of, rewards and rules so that a player can bring their character to a table, either at a convention or your friendly local game store. And if it's a demo agent running the game, you can take and keep those rewards and bring them to the next convention or to another game store. Those missions are, published on a yearly cadence. So we get a few missions each year, and then those will eventually make it to PDF once they go through layout and get some really cool art. And really, the cool sort of fun goal we have is we want to make it easy for GMs to run these adventures, but also make it so that the players have fun, have some ability to port their character around and really let it grow in a living sense.
Right. So tell me a little bit about you. Who are you and what is your history as a gamer?
So I'm Aaron. You can find me at as many conventions as I can squeeze into a year. Right now it's the big two, and then Penny Arcade Expo. I like to go to that as well. I'm sort of a latecomer to the role-playing game scene. I didn't start playing until probably about 14 years ago, when a friend of mine got sick with cancer, and we were trying to find anything, me and a couple other of his friends, to really get him back out of his shell and find some ways for him to enjoy. He was a big video gamer. He was a big RPG player and board game player, but it got hard for him to play. And so we were just trying to help him have fun. And from there, it just sort of started this long-term love affair with sort of the flexibility and creativity that comes from role-playing games. And I just keep diving deeper and deeper and loving it even more each year I do it.
That's awesome. So what's your history with Shadowrun that led you to becoming the missions developer?
It's kind of funny. I went to the Evergreen Game Expo in Tacoma. It's a really, really tiny expo. And a bunch of us were GMing, and I was GMing a game called 13th Age. And a friend of mine, Ben, was running Shadowrun. And we didn't really have any players. It was primarily a miniatures convention, so there wasn't a whole lot of role-playing game players, and we kind of got tired of sitting around in this big empty room with like 6 GMs, and so we just started trying each other's games, and I just sort of got hooked. I love the lore, I love sort of the crunchy nature of it. I love rolling piles and piles of dice. The more dice you can roll, the more fun it is. And Shadowrun really, hits all of those like good feels. So and since then, like I think I've been running Shadowrun for about 6 or 7 years now.
Okay.
And I've been the Shadowrun Missions developer for about a year.
Great. So going to a con and getting some experience with Shadowrun Missions, one of the questions that came up for me is, what is the difference between a season of missions and an arc?
So that's changing a little bit. It's probably easier to explain from 5th edition. So in 5th edition, we had 4 seasons of Chicago. So Chicago would be that long-term mission arc. And so there's the story of, the reclamation of Chicago. And then there's the story of, the bugs resurgence back into Chicago. And so those are really the 2 main arcs that are storylines that come out of that Chicago arc. Now, a season is just 6 missions for Chicago. And also the same was done for Neo Tokyo, which was also 5th edition. With 6th edition, we're changing things up a little bit. With 6, what we're aiming to do is we're aiming for 8 missions a year. So we're increasing it by 2.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a lot more work. I wasn't quite prepared for that. But, it's good because it gives authors more of a chance to try things out. It also gives players that longer term ability to tell their story. And so we're still going to have arcs in terms of we've got Seattle right now. We're in the middle of the Seattle arc, which involves, this 2 groups of Shadowrun fixers and Johnsons that are trying to, push each other around within the story universe. And then that's going to grow over the next 2 years worth of missions that we've got planned out. And then after Seattle, there's probably another arc coming, and we'll see where that goes. Now, the difference is with 5th, at the end of the Chicago arc, your character was done. You could do prime missions, which are more difficult. But basically, you weren't going to play them that much. We're changing that up. With 6th edition, we want you to be able to port that character anywhere it goes. So your character will pick up and go to whatever locations are necessary. Wherever the jobs are, that's where your runner will be.
Oh, wow. So as you get those rewards and your character levels up, for lack of a better word, you don't have to stop at a certain point. You can bring a very high karma runner to a table that has a bunch of new runners.
Yeah, absolutely. It adds a little bit of complexity that usually our GMs are good at handling. The base level of writing and the things that we aim for is easy mode. We do want you to have fun. We want you to come away with feeling like you've accomplished things as a player. There are harder difficulty levels that we've also introduced. So if you and your friends are, you've got 200, 300 karma under your belt and you want to make it more difficult, you can tell the GM, can we do this at a more difficult level? There are rules that allow for us to increase that difficulty and increase the reward as well if you're up for it.
Oh, neat. Okay. All right. So you talked about Chicago, you talked a little bit about Neo Tokyo, and now Seattle. So how many total arcs or seasons are there to choose from and run?
So if you're playing 6th edition, there's one. There's the Seattle one. Now, Hal from the adventure you're about to run in a little bit is also one that's contributed pretty heavily to missions as well. He and I actually took a lot of the Neo Tokyo missions and actually ported those over to 6th edition. So you can run 6th edition for Neo Tokyo. We didn't do that for all of Chicago. It is a time intensive task. But we did want to make sure that, yeah, definitely Hal's in the chat and he is a cool dude. So, but it was super fun working with him on that. So there are those arcs, but there are things called CMPs as well. So there are a lot more missions to help you level your character up.
So CMP, what is CMP versus some of the other letters that come up in missions like SMH or PM?
It's a good question. We do have a deep love of three-letter acronyms, except for PM. That's the weirdo one. So SRM, if you ever see SRM when you're at a convention like at Gen Con in the catalog, SRM stands for Shadowrun Missions. CMP stands for Convention Mission Packs, which is usually mini adventures. They're 4 missions that fit in a locale, or they fit within telling this very specific story. So last year, as an example, last year at Gen Con, we ran the Neo Tokyo Twilight CMP. And what that was it was the conclusion of the Neo Tokyo arc that we weren't able to finish from 5th edition. So it was 4 adventures, and it sort of tied up some of the loose ends and told a story that was hopefully a lot of fun for the players. Then we have SMH, which is Shadowrun Missions Holiday, or So Much Hate. That would be the other thing SMH stands for.
So much hate. I like that.
There are April Fool's missions. They're meant to be completely way out there in left field, and they're supposed to be funny and hard and goofy. We're still waiting on we've got a couple of those missions still out in editing. So hopefully we'll see those in the near future and be able to bring those in. But we don't have any of those for 6th edition yet. And then we've got
all of those are 5th edition and earlier.
Yeah, all of our SMHs are 5th edition and earlier. There are some beautiful ones. You have to like puns though, and I know that's not your favorite. Yeah. So there's the Friendship is Tragic is a just absolute classic where you are attempting to save some centaurs. They may have cutie marks. And then there's Seen It All Before, which every scene is a different scene from a different cool like 80s action movie and just loaded with puns. So they're fun. I've enjoyed running those, and every player I've had, you either groan a lot or you just giggle immensely. So
excellent.
But the other one was Prime Missions, and so those are deliberately meant to be super hard. Normally SRMs or CMPs aren't really lethal a lot of the times unless you've really stuck your foot in it. If you play a PM, there's a good chance that your character could bite it as part of the adventure, and that's always one of the risks, but the rewards are generally about double what you see out of an SRM.
Oh wow. Okay. Neat. Having played a couple of Prime missions and a couple of the April Fool's missions, I think very highly of both of them. They are their own monster, but that's a lot of fun.
So we did do a minor change to Prime missions as well for 6th edition, which is that in 5th edition, when you ran a Prime mission, you were done. You could only run Prime missions from then on out because your rewards were so big. In this case, rewards are big, but you can actually still take your character and still go back to SRMs or go back to CMPs. Your character's not done. We want your character to live on.
Okay. That's really nice. Yeah, because that way you don't have to retire your character and not play them anymore or create them back at ground zero.
Yeah, we found that people want to tell a story, and maybe you can't always tell the story at the table because you've got a 3.5 hour block at a convention. But in your head, you're seeing your character go into that dark warehouse, or you're seeing your character do these amazing things, and you're telling your own story for yourself, which we really love.
Okay. All right. So let's say that I'm a completionist. So can I, as a player with my character, pick up from any season, or do all older edition seasons need to be transposed into newer ones?
So the characters from the previous editions don't port very well, which is the thing that we ran into. We tried it when we went from 4th to 5th, where you could port your old character over and run them as a Prime runner. For 6, we just decided you have to create a 6th edition character from scratch, and then you can play any of the 6th edition missions other than Neo Tokyo, because Neo Tokyo is kind of weird. So any of the 6th edition missions that were written for 6th edition, from here all the way to the end of the edition, somewhere, a decade from now, you're going to be able to play your character in any of those missions, and it's legal.
Okay. So I get the difficulty of transposing like not only the season and the missions themselves into sixth from previous editions, but also the character. Like it makes sense that, okay, at least start over your character. But is there a place people can go if they do want to play like older missions that do get transposed into the newer ones?
Usually they'll be sold as PDFs. And so you can run them at home, and it doesn't necessarily mean you can take your character to a convention. Some of the things we do is to make it fair and to make it a little bit more balanced, because there are definitely qualities of a Shadowrunner which may make them antisocial, or people that are lone wolves or wouldn't play well with others. We sometimes have to outlaw some of those abilities from the book. So you can't just build anything. But if you buy the PDF and you've got a bunch of friends and you want to run that adventure at home, absolutely you can run it at home. You don't have to make it missions legal, especially if it's older edition stuff as well. I know on Drive Through RPG they've got all of the earlier missions, other than like the very, very first season. I don't think those ever got printed to PDF. But I want to say 4th edition and 5th edition has the full complete set. Although I take that back. We're currently working on getting the Neo Tokyo ones out.
Okay.
I'm working with Jason on that to get those finalized. And we've got the art. I think the art's nearing completion somewhere for like the season 9 ones. And then we'll get started on season 10. But it is a long, hard process to make sure that we get it out and lay out to PDF.
Cool. Okay.
But in terms of 6th edition, right now the only way to play them is going to be at conventions until we get through our backlog of season 9 and season 10, and then those will go out to PDF as well.
Okay, so kind of spinning off that, then what makes something missions legal as characters or as a mission?
So we'll start with the mission. So they're written by a group of missions writers. So we've got a set that we have. Typically what I'll do is I will make a call generally a little bit before Origins. Hey, I need writers. This is how many slots I have. Please submit a sample, and we'll go pick the 8 writers that we're going to need for this year. Because of COVID, everything got shuffled, and so I don't need writers for next year. I happen to have a whole set of writers for next year, but the year after, I'm going to make another call for writers. For your character, we have an SRM guide, which is almost a book in and of itself. Right now, I think it weighs in at about 65 pages long, and it goes through like the first part of it's actually guidance for GMs, like how to handle really weird situations, like what happens if somebody tosses an entire bandolier of grenades into a crowd? What do you do? Because we've seen these things at tables, and we want to really help the GM sort of navigate these difficult sort of things and handle it roughly the same from table to table. Because the last thing a player wants to hear is, hey, I was allowed to do this at table X, but now you're saying that I can't do it at table Y. So we have a bunch of those guidance for GMs, but then we have a whole bunch of things around like, hey, this one like gun doesn't exist. You can't use it. Sorry, it's not balanced, and it throws things off. So we remove a couple things for balance. Like an example would be for the Street Weird, the magic book. We didn't allow players to take the ability to have inhabitation spirits, because inhabitation spirits are evil and should really be reserved only for evil NPCs. Because what you're doing is you're shoving a spirit into another person and basically taking over their body and pushing their spirit out. So it's one of those like mind control things, which, I mean, it gets into really sensitive topics. Mind control. There's a lot of really dark, rough edges to the Shadowrun universe, and we try to keep it as family friendly as possible, even though you're hardened criminals.
That makes sense for missions in a con atmosphere, and you never know who's going to be sitting at the table, and so that makes sense. So what are some of the big story arcs of recent years, and how have they affected the lore of Shadowrun overall?
Probably the biggest one was Chicago, where ultimately you had this part of the setting that had been nuked because of bug spirits, and then sort of left idle for a couple decades. And when we revisited it to tell the story, basically you had the corpse, these big, dystopian corporations that may resemble some of our very largest corporations, were attempting to reclaim parts of the city. And they were hiring runners to go in and sometimes falsifying ownership records or any of these really probably less than stellar activities. And that slowly rolled into the fact that, hey, by the way, spoilers, there are bug spirits that are still there, which was the reason for the nuke. And now you've got to deal with it, or somebody's going to come in and nuke the place. And so what ended up happening was we had this big, massive conclusion where the runners had the chance to either prevent the bug spirits from taking over Chicago and preventing another nuke, or if they failed, like they were, and we got this buy off through all of the rest of the Shadowrun writers, we were going to nuke Chicago. And we tallied up the results from all of the tables we ran at Origins and Gen Con, and sure enough, the runners won in most of the tables. There were definitely a lot of in the overall, like a lot of folks that didn't quite make it through, or Chicago didn't make it in their storyline, but the sum was that Chicago survived.
Yeah, that was that was like my first or second year really getting into the Shadowrun community and missions. And since we have some time, we're firing through these questions. Some of the lore of Chicago, and next week for Rules of Cool, we'll be talking with some of the fiction writers of Shadowrun, and they'll be telling stories as well. But after Chicago was nuked for these bug spirits, and then it's what's called a containment zone, where the radiation is very high and it's a radius around downtown Chicago. And going in there, like, it's a very lawless area. So kind of any rules go. No cops are going to show up if you're in the containment zone or the CZ. And that was something that whole plot was really neat, because at that finale, when what you're doing is going to impact the lore of the game and canon, but also like doing the finale when every other table around you is also doing the finale, and like hearing how many different tables have characters that are burning edge. We talked a little bit about edge last week as kind of a luck mechanic in Shadowrun 5, and I'm not sure if this is still the case in 6. You can tell me, but you spend edge to spend your luck and stuff like that. But if you're dying, you can save your character by burning edge, and that way that edge. So if I have 4 edge and I burn an edge, I now have 3 edge forever, unless I spend karma on more. So that was
burning edge is still there.
Oh, it is.
Yep.
That was such a scary thing to hear how many edge were collected at the end of that session.
I think at my table alone, we went through 15 edge. It was an epic battle. I mean, they came out on top, but like they went through multiple characters worth of edge on that one.
Wow.
And so we finished Chicago, right? And then we went to Neo Tokyo, where we started to tell the story of runners on the street dealing with the Yakuza, and then we were moving up towards dealing with some of the smaller corporations, and we were going to move on to megacorps and then get into the government aspects of it. Unfortunately, that one was cut short. We do know that the players had sort of this drastic like change in directions, which I know some didn't expect it, where you go from this Wild West sort of Chicago CZ to, hey, you're firing that gun? Like, by the way, there's a camera on every block. There's a watcher spirit all over the place. This is a police state. Like, if you're going to do things, you've got to keep it on the down low and really get into the black trench coat style of play, as opposed to the pink mohawk style of play. And I enjoyed it. I like having both of those styles available, but I know that some struggled a little bit with that.
Yeah, I remember that next season, things that you could get away with in Chicago were just not the case anymore in Neo Tokyo. You'd cast a spell outside and someone somewhere saw it, and now the authorities are on their way. And same thing, you want to go anywhere, you cannot be armed. So that was, a big change. And when it entirely changes your methods and way of thinking about a run, it's hard to adjust to that.
Well, and as the setting goes, one of the interesting things is you've got these cities that are actually police states. And so if you run in London, or if you run in Neo Tokyo, or if you run in Manhattan, like these are police states. You can't get away with anything unless you really know the area and you can start moving in the shadows much more effectively. There's places like the CZ or the QZ for Boston, or the Sox, which is outside of London. Like these are parts of the setting where it's the Wild West. The police don't go there. There's no security teams. Like you just deal with gangers, which will fit that pink mohawk style of play. And then you get in between, like Seattle sort of being the home of Shadowrun. You get this sort of mirror shades where you've got a little bit of pink mohawk, you've got a little bit of black trench coat. And it really is what you want to make of it as a player and as a GM, which I deeply love. I think that's so much fun.
Yeah, I feel like everyone tries to be black trench coat until you plan and you try to get everything so covert and it all goes to hell. So you just blow it all up, right?
There's also a general trend that I've seen, which is you start the game. The first 2 hours is black trench coat, and then you run out of time, right? Like you realize your slot at a convention's almost out. So all right, I guess we're going loud, and you go straight into pink mohawk.
Yeah, I've definitely experienced those missions.
But looking at iconic, because we talk about iconic locations, right? Like you've got these long-term like parts of the story. I mean, Shadowrun's been around for 30 some odd years. So you'll find within Seattle, we're gonna probably visit the old Renraku Arcology, which has a long and storied history. It's been, 24 years since the bad things happened in the arcology, so things are different, but you get a chance to be there, you get a chance to experience it, you get a chance to impact like how it's run.
Yeah, that's definitely neat. So all right, let's say that we have sold everyone in our chat on Shadowrun Missions. Where can our viewers go to build a character and start playing?
All right, so the first thing to do is you're going to need the SRM guide. We're on version 1.6 now, which we try to release them shortly after new books come out. We're usually really good about that in the winter, but when it gets to con season, it's really hard for me to do the conventions and also try to update for the latest and greatest books. So usually we have a little bit of downtime there. That's linked off of the Shadowrun Missions Facebook page. It's probably one of the best ways to get a hold of things. I also post it in the Shadowrun tabletop forums and also at Shadowrun Missions Online. And so any of those three places are great places to get a hold of the guide, which is just a Dropbox that I put out there for anybody to go grab.
Ava is our moderator tonight in Twitch chat. So Ava, if you wouldn't mind finding some of those links and dropping them, that'd be great.
I might have, I usually write up a script that I use when I drop new links into any of those locations. I bet you somewhere I've got a notepad that already has that. Hopefully it's not too long.
I know if you're on Facebook, you can just search Shadowrun Missions and find it very easily. And Shadowrun Missions Online, that's what, $5 a session or something like that?
I think they just reduced it. I think it's down to $2.50.
Oh, wow. So very accessible way to play. And you don't have to find a group or a GM. You just make your character and you can go, which is nice.
And they're super helpful. So they've got a ton of GMs in there. Not as many as they need. Let's put it that way. They're always looking for more GMs. So if you ever want to be a Catalyst demo agent and run missions there, they're always looking for more. And you get the sort of side benefit of if you decide to go to the big cons, you do get a hotel, right? Like there's a huge advantage of getting a hotel when trying to find one when you go to Gen Con. So if that's one of the things you desire, like they're always looking for agents. But they also, like, all those GMs are great at helping players build new characters that are missions legal, and usually that are a little bit optimized. We have a thriving community of min-max munchkins.
Totally. There was a reason for my character creation session. I asked for Hal. I was like, make me really cool.
Yeah, Amber's character, we may have gotten a lot of dice for that firearms ability.
Excellent. So. Excellent. I can't wait to see her use it.
But yeah, there's a lot of tricks to making it. It's hard to build characters, right? Like it's a crunchy system. It's one of those things like, and at conventions we do build a runner workshops. So it's 2 hours. We've got a GM. Usually it's 4 players, and they're walking you through how to build a character. Like, what do you think a good dice pool is? Which, by the way, as a hint, it's at least 12. But if you make a suboptimal character, it's okay. Shadowrun Missions is written where you don't need to have dice pools of 12. You can get away with a dice pool of 9 and still be able to be okay through the mission. It really wanted to be approachable.
Yeah, definitely. So what do you play a mission? So great. I saved the world in Chicago. What happens at the end of the session? You get certain rewards, and what do they mean? It's karma, new yen, favor points, heat, and reputation.
There are a lot of things to sort of keep track of. Like if I look at a more traditional D20 system, right? Like you get XP and you get gold, maybe you get some gear, right? So the main sort of spendable resources that you get as a Shadowrunner is first and foremost karma. Karma is your XP. You use that, you spend it on improving your character skills, or you may improve your attributes. Like let's say you want to take your agility from 4 to 5. That's going to cost a big chunk of karma. The next thing that you're going to get is new yen. New yen is the monetary payment. So, and that includes things that you've stolen and fenced. That includes bonus activities, because sometimes you'll have a mission where somebody will send you on a side quest that also pays out a little extra. Generally, you're going to see in a mission anywhere from 5 to 7 karma, and from 5,000 up to probably 9 or 10,000 new yen. Generally, the ranges you're going to see. But you'll use that on gear, which could be, cyberware, bioware, a new gun, some ammo, maybe another med kit because you ran out of charges on your med kit. But bigger yet, you're going to have to pay for your lifestyle every month. Because if you don't pay for your lifestyle, you're out on the street. And that has some negative ramifications to your character. You don't start a mission with edge when you're living on the street. You had to spend that edge just to stay alive. And so when you start a mission, you have to accrue it, which is a little bit more difficult. So,
oh, wow. Neat.
Making sure, you want to make sure you have low lifestyle at least for playing SRM. Favor points. So whenever you do something for an NPC, you're going to earn favors with them. And so really the best way to think about it is one favor. You could earn 1 to 3 favor points. That's a little favor, a middle favor, and a big favor. And you can choose to either spend those favors to get reduction on costs for gear, get free information, because sometimes you need legwork as part of the mission. And sometimes you can just turn that in for loyalty. And so you can say, look, you don't owe me a favor. I think having you as a contact is a much more valuable thing to me than you owing me a favor. And loyalty has its own impacts on the game. So you can earn better pay. You can fence things for more money when you have better loyalty. So really, it's a lot of choices you have to make in terms of what you want to do with that reward.
Cool.
The last 2 are heat and reputation. They're hard to call rewards. They're a little bit like penalties in a way. So heat is you've done some illegal things, right? And there's cameras all over the place. There's just people on the street that may see you coming through. There's Probably somebody with the camera on their car happened to pick it up when you were walking through with your gigantic claymore sword on your back. Basically, you're slowly accruing all of these little data points. And if you accrue enough of them, at the end of the session, you gain a point of heat. And heat starts to get hot when it goes bad for long enough. So eventually, you're in the area. The police are just going to automatically send a high threat response team. And those are the basically SWAT teams. Another one is they could burn your SIN. They could trace all of this down to say, like, this SIN was at this location and is clearly somebody that's criminal. You can't use that SIN anymore. So there goes 10,000 yen out the door, because SINs aren't cheap.
And SINs are like your IDs, your fake IDs.
System identification number.
Yeah.
So you can get a fake, and Shadowrunners don't use real ones if they're good. I'm just kidding. But most of them will have a fake. And you can't get anything if you don't even have a fake SIN, right? You can't buy a comlink. You can't go to a restaurant. Like, all your financials, all of your access is really tied to that SIN. And then the last reward is reputation. And it's not really used heavily in SRM, at least for Seattle. You will definitely see it more heavily used as we get past Seattle. Where we have a little bit more of a chance to build up all of the different factions that would be in play. I don't think definitely my fault on this one. Like, we didn't spend a lot of time building up the factions and seeing how reputation would fit with them. But what it really stands for is, what a given faction thinks about you. Like, is it a positive sort of influence, or is it negative? And that really is going to play an impact on, do you gain edge whenever you talk to somebody from that faction, or do they gain edge against you?
Oh, neat. Okay.
And so
I kind of like
fun.
that change with reputation. It's which used to be street cred, correct?
Yep.
So it's like that do people want to work with you? And
of all the 5th edition stuff, I think the street cred was probably the most useful. I think public awareness and notoriety was really difficult to use and use effectively. I really like 6 for what they've done with heat and reputation. I think those are just so usable from a GM standpoint and as a writer standpoint as well.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so great. You've got all these rewards, and now you're waiting for the next mission to start. How do you level up between sessions?
So if you're playing a regular game at home, you go through weeks, if not months, of downtime to improve your character. We did a little different. We did things differently for SRM because we knew we didn't have a lot of downtime. Because there's sort of this assumption, like every other week or every 2 weeks, you're going back out on a run so that you can earn some more new yen so you can pay your rent. So we abstracted away that. That's our little homebrew brewed rule in order to handle it. So anytime you have downtime, you get one major downtime action and one minor downtime action, kind of mirroring your action economy from combat, to spend on improving. And if you want to improve attributes, that doesn't cost a downtime action. It's just assume that you as a runner are constantly working to improve yourself. And that when you have the karma, you can spend it and you get the bump. But things like building a lodge takes time. So that's going to be a major downtime action. Going and buying something that you can't necessarily buy easily, maybe that costs a minor to be able to buy it. And so between each mission, you earn these downtime actions that you can then spend.
Neat. That's a big change. I like that, because in the past, it's pretty much just been time, right?
Yeah, and it's not in lockstep. So one of the things we wanted to do from a storytelling standpoint was things occur on specific dates. So if you play that first mission of Seattle, like Seattle has just gone independent. It's 2081. It's the first 2 weeks of January, so it's rainy. It's Seattle. I mean, it's raining even in the summer, but it's more rainy. And you hear, like, written into the adventure, like, hey, St. Louis just went independent as well. And so now you've got sort of this contextual, like, hey, what's happening in the universe when I'm playing these missions?
Yeah.
And so And then I think we wrapped up for Gen Con last year. Last year we played up till mission 8, which means really in universe you're up to like May, early May, late April, and everybody's there. Like all the players are in the same position.
Awesome.
Now CMPs are weird, right? Like their adventures, they're not necessarily written for any given date, and it would throw off the calendar. So if you do a CMP, you just get the rewards. It doesn't negatively impact your timeline. You don't have to buy extra months of rent, because by the way, we abstracted rent too. Every 2 missions, every 2 SRMs, you have to pay rent.
Oh, wow. Huh. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I guess that kind of makes sense, because in the time between getting jobs, usually you're not getting jobs back to back theoretically. And some of those jobs take quite a long time to get legwork and actually complete the assignment. So
yeah, and so most of them are written from the idea that, hey, you've got like 2 or 3, days worth of work, and then you're probably spending the rest of the time healing from your days of work.
Yeah.
Or you're doing downtime, right? Like you want to be able to improve. You want to be able to go buy that thing that you've been saving up for.
Yeah.
Maybe you want to get surgery. Like those are things that are definitely downtime activities.
Yeah, definitely. Neat.
Vacation is important, as somebody put in there.
Yeah, I like that. So we kind of touched on this. So there's really not a time that players max out and become missions illegal anymore, if I'm understanding right.
That's correct. We want characters to keep going forward. So we do things probably that would irk some folks, and we are aware of that. So really, it's balancing out. Do you want to be able to play your character longer, or are you going to be more upset when we put caps on your dice pools? And so that's the trick that we ended up using is, look, you can't have 50 dice. We're just not going to allow it, because it's not fair to, you've got 50 and you're at a table with a noob who's got 12 dice. Like they're going to feel, frankly, not useful.
Yeah.
And so that's the balancing act that we put in place. There still will be differences, right? Like somebody with 35 dice, which I think is last I calculated, that's the biggest dice pool you can have based on our rules. Like, yeah, they're 3 times as good as what a starting player is. But that's probably the closest we can get, and still allow you to keep carrying that character forward. And like I said, we do allow difficulties. So if you want to play at a higher difficulty level, I think we've got 3 difficulty levels that we've got specified in the SRM guide. If you're curious, doing it though adds like 4 extra dice to every NPC and increases like every threshold by 2. Like it starts getting much harder the further up you go.
I wonder if there could be some kind of reward for teamwork too, in terms of like, okay, great, I can negotiate 3 times better than you can, but if I assist you so that you can get that negotiation experience, like it encourages that kind of collaboration and helping each other. And that's kind of a neat thought.
I like that. I love seeing, ultimately when I look at a table, what I want is every player to have a bit of spotlight. Mm-hmm. And so when we write the missions, we look at the basic archetypes, right? You've got Deckers, you've got Street Sams, you've got Physical Adepts, you've got Mystic Adepts, Mages. Did I say Deckers and Riggers? But we've got these main archetypes within Shadowrun. And we want to be able to make sure that if anybody sits down at the table and they have that archetype, we have a challenge that allows them to shine.
Yeah.
And that it's a challenge that archetype has to be there to shine. You can't have somebody slide in. At the same point, if somebody doesn't sit down with that archetype, we want you to be able to still finish the adventure. Like, oh shoot, we don't have a Decker. Like there goes the mission. So there's always a way to do things without it. But if you're there, it's just easier if you've got that archetype there.
Right.
Is really the crux.
Okay. So what conventions usually host Shadowrun missions that people can attend and play, and where are they?
So the big 2, right? Gen Con and Origins. We've got an army of demo agents usually, although this year I think it's going to be a little bit rough as well. Like COVID is still a thing. And so we're bringing as many agents as are comfortable to be able to go. And I'm not part of that, right? Like I'm a demo agent myself, but we've got the lovely Mary who runs the demo agent group, and she does her best to organize and keep things moving. So there's those two, and then as demo agents, we're encouraged to go to local conventions. So there's conventions like the Midwest Gaming Convention, which is located in Kansas City, I believe. And so there's PAX Unplugged that's located in Philadelphia. And usually we've got a couple demo agents there that will be more than willing to run. Also, there's friendly local game stores. If you've got a question, if there's a demo agent in your area, there's the Catalyst Demo Agents, Catalyst Demo Team has a Facebook page, and you can always ask, and usually they'll try to put you in touch with a local demo agent to run games, or maybe there's a local store.
Cool. Yeah, so Rem Alternus is going to be at Origins as a vendor this year. So I'll be popping in just to visit friends to the Shadowrun room. But Gen Con, I have offered up to run some first tastes, which are the 2-hour, learn how to play, like what are the rules. So if you're going to be at Gen Con, come hang out and we'll get you started.
Yeah, I know with an interesting thing when you start looking at the demo agents, they are completely volunteer. And I know we actually have one guy who's written a number of Shadowrun missions. He actually wrote a first taste mission so that if players or if the GMs aren't comfortable just making stuff up on the fly, because not everybody's super comfortable improving. I love improving, but there are a couple missions that as demo agents they have accessible now. So we've been really working on trying to make sure that everybody is really well supported, so that you can run your game with others and just have a good time.
Yeah, one thing I do have to say that was a lot of fun. I've only I'm terrified of GMing Shadowrun because it's a lot of crunch, and I'm more role play than crunch. But when I ran the first taste previously, I just ran a very simple thing, and every table I ran for, it was the same adventure, but they all ended up drastically different based on the ideas that were thrown around the table and the role play and the archetypes that were selected and stuff like that. So that was a really neat experience.
Yeah, hopefully Mike's not watching this, because Mike is the one that schedules us all. I have a deep love of doing first taste because I get to have a different mission all the time. I literally make up a new thing every time I sit down. Aww. And I look at what's at the table, and I try to match it to the mood of the table. So maybe they're being hired by this fairly bad gang that wants them to go steal this crate from a warehouse, or maybe they want to sabotage something. But like, do you want it really explosive? Do you want it really like black trench coat? And I really look for matching that mood. Versus sometimes if I'm running Shadowrun missions, I may get the same mission like 6 or 7 times, and it's great because I don't have to prep as much. It's beautiful from that standpoint. But sometimes a little variety is the spice of life. So
yeah, definitely.
First taste is great. I love first taste.
Well, we have just a couple minutes left. So what is a missions adventure that you've run that like turned into a fun story that like is one of your favorite tables that sat down and played a mission with you? What did they do?
There's a group of players that comes to Origins. They always play together. There are 7 of them, so they fill a table. They used to be known as Trolling Thunder, and then they did the Pirates of Pizzazz. I am not sure what they're going to come to future conventions with. But it's usually something way over the top. And so I was running a mission. It was the finale for season 9. And they were playing the Pirates of Pizzazz, and they had pooled their money and bought an airship. And so and what makes it even more funny is, so they had bought 6 of the seats at the table, and the 7th was just somebody who had bought a ticket at the table. So somebody not part of their group. They came over, okay, can we add our 7th in? And yeah, sure, no problem. So we had 8 players, and this person had no idea what they were in for, that one random person. And they come rolling in with the airship. They come kidnap the person that was supposed to die in scene 3, and they roll out of town with him. And so it became this exercise of like, oh my gosh, how do I get this back on the rails? Because we've gone so far off the reservation. Like, I have no idea how we're going to handle it. It was great fun. They were a blast. They just come to have a great time. And really that's what I'm looking for. Like, you've got a bunch of players that have a problem to solve, and they come together and they come up with these crazy creative solutions, and it's just so fun to see. The Seven Dwarves at least one year. Loper's in the chat. He mentions they have come as the Seven Dwarves.
Thank you so much, Aaron. I always love hanging out and talking with you. Aaron is like a mentor to me. So we've worked closely with Rem Alternus and stuff like that. So it's really cool to see his love of Shadowrun and the reason we met come into his mission developer role. So thank you so much for joining me. We are getting close to the top of the hour anyway. But thank you again for your tireless work as missions developer. And I can't wait to see what is to come at convention season this year.
Thank you.
All right, so up next is episode 2 of Shadowrun's Sixth World, Emerald's Lich, and the Case of the Beleaguered Professor. Don't forget that we have a wonderful partner and sponsor in Catalyst Game Labs, and we'll be hosting a giveaway this week for a PDF of Shadowrun Sixth World Seattle Edition. You can enter to win by typing #RenPC in the chat. That gets you one entry. And you can get additional entries to win by going to our donation page at www.remalternus.com/Nguyen. All donations help us to pay our cast and crew and keep us producing content. And our biggest donors can have a message read at the end of the episode by the Shadowrunner of their choice. So definitely check it out. And please, please, please remember to go check out the Kickstarter for Misspent Youth, Fall in Love, Not in Line, an RPG about teen angst, friendship, and rebellion. Stand up to authority and fight injustice with a rules-light, highly narrative, and story-focused game. It's now live on Kickstarter at www.remalternus.com/misspent-youth. Thank you all for joining, and we'll see you next time, where we'll talk with some of the best storytellers and writers of Shadowrun Sixth World and hear more about the lore of the world of Shadowrun. Later, PCs.